This is a story that's, well, it's just incredibly tough to talk about, but it's so important that we do. It's about an amazing athlete whose life was cut tragically short, not at the finish line, but in an act of betrayal that is just unimaginable. This is Rebecca Cheptegei, an Olympian who represented her country, Uganda, on the world's biggest stage, a national record holder, a sergeant in the military. I mean, she was a true hero to so many people. And then, just weeks after competing in the Paris Olympics, her life was taken from her. The story of how and why is a brutal reminder of a crisis that goes far, far beyond the world of sports. To really understand the full weight of this story, we kind of have to start at the end, with its shocking, tragic conclusion. But, the tragedy of her death really only hits home when you know the incredible person we lost. So, who was Rebecca Cheptegei? What did she accomplish in her all-too-short life? Her achievements, just look at this list. It's so diverse and so impressive. Of course, she was a Paris Olympian and a national record holder, but she was also a sergeant in the Ugandan People's Defense Force. That tells you everything, doesn't it? She wasn't just an elite athlete. She was a leader, a public servant, and a truly powerful figure in her community. Okay, now we have to turn to the horrific events themselves. And I have to say, the details of the attack are not just brutal, they were calculated. It was September 1st. She was just returning home from church when she was ambushed. Her ex-partner doused her in petrol and set her on fire. She was rushed to the hospital, and she fought. She fought for 4 days before she finally succumbed to her injuries. 80%. Just let that number sink in. That was the extent of the burns covering her body. It's a figure that's almost impossible to even comprehend, and it just speaks to the absolute horror of this attack. And in a really grim twist, her attacker also suffered severe burns during the assault. He was taken to the very same hospital where he died from his injuries just a few days later. So the big question is, why? Why did this happen? Well, the investigation and what her family has said all point to a motive that is just chillingly common. It was a dispute over her independence. This is really the core of it right here. On one side, you've got Rebecca. Her goal was financial independence. She earned her own money, she bought her own land, and she was building a house near her training base. On the other side, her attacker's alleged motive was pure resentment over her property and her success. Her sister Dorcas put it so perfectly. She did not want to depend on anyone. And the absolute tragedy here is that her success, her drive for self-sufficiency, that was seen as a threat. As you can imagine, when the news of her death spread, this personal tragedy just exploded into a global outcry, and it became a moment of true national grief for Uganda. The reaction was swift, and it was widespread. Her father demanded justice, the Kenyan government promised a full investigation, the United Nations condemned it as gender-based violence, and Uganda's parliament paid tribute, using her death as a catalyst to push for stronger protections for women. At her funeral, thousands of people marched, and this sign, carried by protesters, it became a rallying cry. A house where a woman is not safe is not a home. Her death had become a powerful symbol for a much, much larger movement. So what is Rebecca Cheptegei's legacy? I think it's found in the urgent, really difficult questions her death forces all of us to confront. First, why are so many successful female athletes, particularly in that region, so vulnerable to violence? Rebecca's story is tragically not the first, and it highlights a really disturbing pattern. Second, and this gets right to the core of the alleged motive, how and why does a woman's financial success and independence become a threat in some relationships? It's a question that challenges some really deep-rooted power dynamics. And finally, what systems need to be put in place to protect these athletes? So many of them, just like Rebecca, train far away from their home countries, and that can leave them isolated and, well, potentially more vulnerable. But her memory is now being honored in a really powerful way. Paris, the city where she ran her final Olympic marathon, is going to name a sports venue after her. It's going to be a permanent reminder of her life, her spirit, and the fight she now represents. At the end of the day, Rebecca Cheptegei's legacy is so much more than a marathon time or a national record. It is a powerful, urgent call to action for justice for victims, for better protection for women, and for a fundamental change in the attitudes that allow this kind of violence to happen in the first place.